If you ask most people in Argentina what happened to their black population, the response will probably be something like, well, they disappeared, perhaps alongside certain other common explanations like, they were all sent off to die during the Paraguayan War, or they all died in epidemics. Oh. And if you ask good old Dr. Google, you'll get grandiose, completely unsourced explanations like, they literally just killed them all. So what actually happened? Well, I'm gonna tell you, and afterwards I'll talk a little bit about the character of racism in Argentina today, because it's related and also very much a thing, regardless of how much some Argentines insist that it's not. Hi, I'm Bad Empanada, and I never envisioned actually calling myself that out loud when I named my channel. Oops. This is the first of a new, shorter style of video that I'm going to be making alongside my longer form content. It's important to emphasize first that black Argentines did not actually disappear. They've always been around and they still are today. The issue is more that proportionate to the general population, the numbers dwindled. In the early 19th century they were around 30% of the total, but today they're only around 0.4%. So what happened? Well, after Argentina became independent and slowly sort of united, it very slowly and gradually abolished slavery. Large parts of the country's elite were huge racists who saw the black population as some sort of problem that had to be solved. But they didn't quite go about it in the really on-the-nose way that the myths tend to emphasize. First, let's talk about those myths. Historian George Reed Andrews showed that there is no evidence that black Argentine soldiers died disproportionately in the Paraguayan War, and that they were not hit any harder by epidemics than the rest of the population. So, both totally wrong. Additionally, while Argentine leaders did no doubt say some very deplorable things about their black countrymen, the sometimes purported mass killings and extermination campaigns, as claimed in certain articles that are high in the Google search results for the topic, are not a thing that actually happened. Except to indigenous people, but you know, that's a separate issue. So what did happen? Well, looking at census data from Buenos Aires, which was by far the most populous part of the country and still is, the black population there peaked at 14,000, which already wasn't that much. 50 years later, this had declined to 8,000, while the white population had multiplied by 10. This was due to two things. First, as the numbers may indicate, the government fostered the migration of poor, white European immigrants, partly because they just wanted lots of immigrants, and partly because they were following the ideology called blanqueamiento. The idea, very common across Latin America at the time, that it was desirable to whiten the population. So this mass immigration led to the relative importance of the black community quickly dwindling just due to numbers. That immigration also resulted in a lot of mingling between the black and white populations. And so, you know, black people married white people, they had mixed race kids, etc. But that doesn't mean that black people were absorbed or anything like that. Rather, the government, as part of the Blanqueamiento campaign, actually started to define mixed race people as not black. For example, they invented the category Trigueño, in which lighter-skinned, often mixed-race African descendants and dark-skinned Europeans would both be placed into together, in a clear effort to obfuscate the differences between them. So then the government and people could point to these official statistics and be like, hey look, there's no black people in Argentina, even though there obviously were. And that created the idea that there are no black people in Argentina, which only became more entrenched as even more white immigrants flooded the country in the 20th century. In reality, today there's more black Argentines than there ever has been, and most of them are descended from the original black population. And black Argentines contributed a whole lot to early 20th century Argentine culture, though in ways that most people don't really notice. For example, there's clear African influences in tango music, and today, even though many Argentine people will tell you that there's no black Argentines, they're just wrong. And with more recent French-speaking immigration there from West Africa, it's likely that the Afro-descended community is only going to grow. Now, on to racism in Argentina. For context, Argentina has a larger population of people who are visibly of indigenous ancestry than people tend to think. Just based off my subjective everyday experiences, I'd say it's about 20 to 30% of the population, and more when you go up north. Though it's very difficult to find reliable numbers, as they're based on self-identification, and many darker skinned people self-identify as white because it's perceived more positively. Anyway, so people here, not all of them but certainly a lot, have a very weird perception of what qualifies as racism. Many of them seem to have this mentality where you can't be racist against anyone except black Africans. So racism against darker skinned Latin American people and Asians, etc. is more normalized. For example, a very common slur is negro de mierda, with negro meaning black. It's used 99.99% of the time against dark-skinned people in a very, very derogative way. Yet those who use it will insist that they're not being racist. Actually, I'm saying that they're black in their soul, not in their skin. Oh, yeah, okay. The fact is that the term associates negative traits, like criminality and laziness, with skin color. So on the extremely rare occasion where someone who's white is called negro de the implication is that they are like a dark-skinned person, and this is a bad thing. So it's so obviously racist, but those who like to use the term aren't gonna admit it. And that's just one example of how racism here functions. Generally, if someone meets, say, a black, African-descended person, they're gonna treat them fine. Because people here are more conscious of racism against black people because, you know, they love US culture. That's why. That's just the reason. Then they'll go and buy some vegetables from the local Bolivian greengrocer who is literally their neighbor, treat them like crap, and go home and have a nice conversation over dinner about how those damn Bolivians sure are negros de And if you call them on that, of course they're gonna act like the very notion that they could possibly be racist is ridiculous. Negros de alma, che, calmate. Oh. There's also the very important fact that Argentina was founded on the same mass murder of indigenous people as, you know, like a million other colonial nations were. Don't tell anyone though, it's a secret. So yeah, of course Argentina has racism and it was built on racism. But I mean, I also don't think it's quite as bad as many people who have no idea what they're talking about say, nor is it anywhere near as non-existent as many Argentines say. Anyway, that's the video. Yeah, great. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you guys like this new format. I might try to make like one of these every week, maybe every 2 weeks, I don't know. If I can actually come up with an interesting topic and it doesn't distract too much from my longer and more important stuff. Hope you learned something. Subscribe and stuff. Great. Yeah. Woohoo.